So there's two things are tied together. So first of all, if I say to you, have you got a risk plan? If I ask a business owner, have you got a risk plan? Most of them will look at me blankly and, what is a risk plan? Most people don't think about risks because, we're too busy doing the things every single day. And you know what? That's never going to happen. And I've had that experience with clients in the past. And I remember one particular instance where we were running a risk exercise with the client. And this is at the height of a particular drought period a couple of years back. And we're going through and I said to him, what would happen if this contract of yours you've got was lost because of the drought? And the response is, no, it'll never happen. Well, guess what? About a month later, I get a phone call saying, you know what? We lost the contract because of the drought. And so we've got to have the ability in a business to forecast. We've got to be willing to go, okay, well, what happens if it goes down? And so the second part to that is, okay, if the internet goes down, what are the redundancies in the business that allow us to continue at a semi-normal, semi-operating fashion so that at least we can continue as opposed to purely shutting the door?
Yeah, exactly.
So the solution or the answer, I think, is that business owners and society needs to plan for risk, and then you need to have your redundancies in place. I mean, think about it. If your business is an online business, you generate 100% of your revenue online, and the internet goes down for 3 days. What is it going to do for you?
Exactly.
What does it do for your business, for your customers? How do you operate?
Exactly. So it takes a bit of imagination.
It does.
To imagine that scenario and then think how you're going to deal with it, which takes, secondly, resourcefulness. So first of all, have a bit of imagination to just speculate and think about how it's going to be, contemplate what would happen. And then you need to be resourceful and imaginative also, and think about, okay, how can we deal with this? And sometimes there's no way. You can't see an answer. So you might have to talk to somebody else and say, how would you do if this was the case? And so what would you do if you're that online business?
Look, there's a few things that I would recommend. First of all, there is massive risk in tying all of your IT infrastructure. When I talk about that, I'm talking about the communication network, so the internet, to the one provider. So for example, your landline is going through Optus, your internet is going through Optus, your mobiles are going through Optus. All of a sudden, Optus goes down, everything goes out. You're screwed. Yeah. So you're better off having a bit of diversification and going, okay, maybe one for Telstra, or maybe you might say, you know what, I'm going to keep it with Optus, but I'm going to have a Telstra backup SIM card, a Telstra air modem, whatever you want to call it, so that I can turn it on, I can switch it on.
Plan B.
I've got a plan B. I might have, if I've got forms, for example, or if I'm an e-com business, maybe I'll have my product catalog printed. I know it sounds archaic, but maybe I have my catalog printed so that I've got access to it. I know my pricing. I can take phone calls. I can write down orders. You know, so you don't have to
able to pay with a check.
check. No. Yeah, IOU, sort of like an IOU.
Cash.
Cash is king. So there are ways, and like you said, you've got to be creative. You've got to be willing to think outside the square and go, okay, well, what else can I do? How else can I leverage?
Yes.
And sometimes there's not going to be a solution. And the solution might be that, you know what?
We're screwed.
We're screwed. Yeah. So maybe in those cases, the solution for the e-com business that can't operate for 3 days, maybe the solution is, okay, what are you going to do when it all works again?
Yeah.
What can we do to regain...
Ignite it.
Reignite. That is exactly right. What can we do? How can we reignite? So they're the sort of things that you can think about.
Yeah.
Maybe even have a communication strategy so the customers know that if something happens, if the internet goes down, here's a way you can contact us, as an example.
So can I run something by you?
Yeah.
This is a bit weird. So generational. I believe that, generally speaking, younger people confronted with an issue are resourceful and imaginative, and they'll think a way around it. They'll reignite the business. Older people, generally speaking, I'm one of them, tend to think, oh, we're screwed. What can you do? So older people need to particularly get back to that younger mindset and think about, how can I have the energy and the wisdom and the power to overcome these things and not just accept it? You with me?
I agree to an extent, but I actually think there's also the flip side.
Okay.
So I agree with you in the sense of the resourcefulness, but the resourcefulness for the younger generation is purely digital. Not pure, but very, very, very digital. So if I said to my kids, for example, find this information, they will be able to go onto Google and find it. But if there was no internet,
How would they do it?
They wouldn't know. Whereas the older generation grew up without the internet. So even myself, I grew up without it. So I know I could go to a dictionary to find the...
Go to a library.
I could go to a library, I'm going to do that. And I've had non-internet experience to know what I could do. So that goes back to redundancies around processes and systems. But you are right. We need to have a very creative, imaginative way of thinking in order to tackle some of these problems. And there is one other thing that we need to have that goes back to a generational thing, which we discussed before the podcast. And that's the fact that your mattress, under somewhere safe, we need to have cash. Have a reserve, have a wad of cash, few $100, few $1,000, whatever it might be.
Literally got a cash stash. Yeah.
Because like we saw with Optus, like we've seen with Telstra and other sort of outages, when the ATMs go down, you can't access cash. If you haven't got cash, you can't buy anything. If you can't buy anything, if you're stuck, how do we get around? So cash is still, in my opinion, is still king.
Exactly.
Cash cannot...
We cannot have a cashless society. It's not going to function.
Any notion of a cashless society, even from my perspective, I'm hardcore digital, any notion, from my point of view, is rubbish. And I will push back on that.
Yeah. In theory, a cashless society is wonderful.
Theory is great. Cryptos are wonderful in theory.
Right. In reality, no, that's some issues. And you know what? If you had that money under the mattress and you never touched it, great. It's an insurance policy. But if things shut down and you needed that cash,
And people need to stop thinking about the devaluation of cash. Now, some people might think, oh, you've got $1,000 out and it's sitting there for 3 years. You never touch it. Oh, it's only worth $600. It's not about that.
No.
It's not about the value. It's about the fact that you've got something that you can use.
It's a peace of mind too. You can go to bed on that mattress and sleep well at night knowing if things go bad, I've got that money there.
That's right.
And I can use it.
That's right.
Yeah, the cashless society, it's good in theory, but not in reality.
Very, very scary.
Yeah. So, just back to the generational thing for a second, so we do, all business people, regardless of age, we need to contemplate risk. We need to think what could go wrong. We need to imagine what could go wrong. We need to imagine how we're going to deal with it. Have a plan B. It could be, by the way, that everything keeps working fine, but as a taxi driver, technology makes my business less relevant. So we need to think about those sorts of things from a risk point of view as well. How does my business look into the future? How does a news agency look into the future? How does, whatever you do in business, hairdresser, barber, optometrist, whatever you do in the future, how's it going to work? And how can I teach it? What risk is there? How do I imagine I could deal with that risk? What's my contingency? What's my plan B? And just thinking about that. In fact, great business people are the ones that have shown initiative and been resourceful and used their imagination to come up with something better. Uber and Airbnb, they're all products of people's imagination and
challenging the norm.
Yes, exactly right. Thinking about, okay, how does it work? How can I do it better? What could go wrong?
Yeah.
And brilliant, that's really what we need to do in business. Right?
We need to ask the question of what could go wrong more frequently. We need to then explore how we're going to address those issues. What are we going to do about them?
Yeah.
And then really importantly, getting everyone on the same page in the team. It's not enough for the business owner to know that, okay, if the internet goes down, we're going to do X, Y, Z. Everyone on the team needs to know, because you don't want panic. It's the other night when you were at Coles and everyone's buying the water, it's the toilet papers being purchased during the COVID times. That is driven by panic, and people panic. Yeah. You saw with the Optus situation.
Yeah.
People couldn't access social media, and all of a sudden there's a bit of this psychological panic because that's how we are building connections.
Listening to that part of their life.
That's right.
It's something interesting. With the water, it was a PR nightmare for the people that cut the water on. They were 6 hours later in getting the water back on, but their company's reputation is destroyed.
Absolutely.
And the CEO of Optus and her reaction to the situation, that led to her leaving a job.
Yep.
And people's opinion of Optus is not good at the moment. I think most people were expecting some kind of subsidy or repatriation. What they offered wasn't good enough. But the thing is, in business, we need to contemplate what can go wrong, how we're going to manage it. But when those sorts of situations arise, the water doesn't come back on, how are we going to deal with the clients? How are we going to deal with the customer and manage it and turn a negative into a positive if you can? That's a massive issue, right?
It's a massive problem. Now, most companies should be, in my opinion, spending some time to understand what happened to Johnson & Johnson many, many decades ago with the Tylenol problem. I don't know if you know about that. So there was these medications and somebody tampered with them.
Right.
And as a result, patients died. People died.
Wow.
They lost their lives. Now, what Johnson & Johnson, the board, did at that point in time and the decisions that they made changed the view that a lot of people globally had of this particular brand. And they realized that this company is really about the people. Because you know what they did? They made this. So they had a couple of choices. One of the choices was, let's just leave everything as is because there was only a few deaths out of, huge numbers of this medicine that was being sold. And let's run the gauntlet.
That's one
option. Number 2 is let's just put it under the carpet. Don't tell anyone about it. Try and hush.
And it'll go away.
It'll go away.
Hopefully it'll go away.
Option number 3, which is the most costly option, was to pull all of that medicine off the shelves throughout the entire US, even though it was restricted to one area, to pull it off just in case.
Overkill.
And that's what they did. They pulled everything. They lost huge amount of money just in sales. But as a result, the trust,
the brand, integrity,
the integrity went through.
Yeah.
And they were able to reclaim their market spot. They were able to build on the market spot.
Yeah.
And so in times of crisis, you got to go, okay, well, do I hide away from it? Or do I go, okay, we've got a crisis here. We need to face the reality. And in the Optus case, okay, there's a problem.
How do we deal with it? Yeah.
And accept that, okay, we made a problem, potentially.
Yeah.
I don't know. And here's what we're going to do. And we're going to listen. We're going to move forward.
So, by the way, society these days, whether we're traveling on a plane or on a cruise ship, any little thing goes wrong, we're expecting all our money back and a refund, and I've been, I don't agree with it necessarily, but I understand that's the mentality of most people. So the Optus CEO came out and someone mentioned something about a barbershop couldn't operate, and she goes, "Oh, it's terrible." She was being sarcastic. Yeah. It turned out to be a nightmare. You can't do those sorts of things. So we need to not only contemplate how we're going to turn the negative into positive like Tylenol, but we've actually got to have a generosity kind of mentality to say, look, everybody matters. We've got to listen to their situation. We've got to respect their point of view, and if we don't agree with it, and figure out how we're going to make this work.
Absolutely. So you've actually touched on something interesting. We're not going to go down this topic today. This is something I think we should talk about another time. But when we talk about the internet going down, we're talking about, okay, there's a big calamity happening. But what if it's just your channel that goes down? What if it's your website
that
goes down because of whatever? What if it's your mistake? Let's say your website gets hacked, or let's say you didn't pay your bill, or I don't know, and the internet, your website goes down, and that affects your customers.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, Optus obviously is a big issue because...
Well, that could easily happen.
The ocean is huge.
You could do an upgrade on your website and it doesn't function properly.
So you've got to, I guess what we're saying to business owners and what we're saying to people in general is you've got to be in the other person's shoes. Now, that person in the barbershop, unable to run a barbershop for a day, it might not seem like a big thing to someone making $1 million a year as a high-paying CEO. But I tell you what, when that's their business and they're relying on it, their family relies on it, that $500, $1,000, $2,000 of lost income, whatever it is that day,
that's everything.
That is massive.
True.
Massive.
You got to appreciate that and respect that.
Absolutely. And that was missing. Respect.
Exactly.
Missing.
Exactly. She was belittling that person, in fact. Yeah. The opposite of respect. Yeah. Unbelievable.
So part of risk mitigation, part of planning for risk and having these redundancies is how we communicate and how we talk to our customers, to the people that are impacted as a result of whatever's happened. And the word respect needs to come into it. And we need to be mindful of the fact that as businesses, if we're talking about businesses, we impact the lives of people around that.
And that reminds me that I think about this with my kids. We're never going to get everything right. So what do you do in business as a parent or whatever? You look back, or as a husband, you look back on what you did and you do it better next time. So as a business owner, if things aren't, you think, oh, I could have done that better. Implementing that improvement is a great way to be a better business. Absolutely. So just doing it the same way all the time, treating your kids the same way all the time, that's the way we do it here. Not necessarily right. Having some respect and thinking about how I can do it better really does generate big results if you do it right.
So therein lies another topic that we need to talk about at some point in time, which is a business owner's ability to actually be a true business owner, where you are reflecting, where you're self-reflecting, reflecting on the business.
Yeah.
You're willing to change your mindset.
Yes.
You're willing to change your attitude.
Yes.
This whole belief, behavior of I've always done it this way, so
Yes.
therefore it is the best. That's absolute rubbish.
That's death.
It is death, and especially in this digital context,
Yeah.
because your competition's,
No.
they're going to be done differently.
Yeah, they're going to take it away from you tomorrow if you think that way. We've always done it that way.
Absolutely. But look, coming back to...
So, by the way, that just reminds me. So, it's another example of not working in your business, but on your business, taking time away to reflect and meditate on what am I doing? What have I done wrong? Or probably even more beneficial, what I'm doing well. How can I do it better? What do I regret? What could I do differently? They're good things to do.
They're very good things. And it's in those moments that we've got to be asking this question that we've been discussing.
Yeah.
What happens when the digital goes? What happens if technology fails?
When it all hits the fan.
It might be.
That's right.
What's the redundancy?
Yeah.
And then working with your team to develop the redundancies, the processes, whatever it might be, the communication
To be ready.
to be ready.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key message here for
Exactly.
business owners is to embrace and love technology, embrace and love the digital, move forward with it. Don't be in the status quo. This is how we done it forever. However, don't forget that the real world is still the real world.
Yeah.
People are still human beings, and things can happen. And so play out scenarios of not having the digital world, and make sure you have operating systems models so that you can fall back on them
Exactly.
in the worst case situation.
Exactly. So that was a good little chat, Pete. I'm going to go home later, make sure I've got some candles, some cash in the mattress, some water, carry a pigeon.
In the bowl basement underneath.
That's right. That's what we're going to do.
But if anything, I'm, cash.
Yeah, exactly right.
Cash.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Pete. That was great.
Thanks, Bruce.
Hope we got something out of that. Yeah, see you soon.